Welcome to the live stream, everybody. I am your host today, Bumpy McSquigums. I'm joined by a tiny disaster and Cupogoodness. We're talking about what's next in game subscription services. Hello, folks.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, we're all alive. Some of us more alive than others.
Playing hurt, some of us, for
Yes.
sure.
All
Respect.
right. Ah, we have Missy on this day. Hello, Missy.
Also take care of yourself, but respect. You know what I mean? In terms of if you're playing hurt. Hey, Missy, how's it going? Hey, I appreciate all the support on social media lately. It's been a really nice thing.
Indubitably. All right, so today we're talking about. Oh my goodness, what has happened when I looked away? All right. Today we are talking about what's next in game subscription services. And, well, it seems like more and more companies, some of the more periphery companies mostly, are doing subscription services, but some of the bigger ones as well. So, how did you want to start? You said you're mentioning maybe starting by talking about experiences we have all had personally with various different subscription services.
Yeah, let's define it, and then we'll get into that kind of side of things. So, definition-wise, we're talking about things like Xbox Game Pass, which I often mislabel Xbox Games Pass. Also, PlayStation is working on some things. They had PlayStation Plus, and PlayStation now is different than Plus, right? Yeah. They're trying, I think, to repackage that at the moment, is what my understanding is. And that might come into play with this new Project Spartacus, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then you have the other two major platforms, if you talk about console and PC, Steam and Nintendo Switch, that don't participate really in the subscription type of thing. Although I think Nintendo Switch has some things going on. The online multiplayer aspect of their stuff is I think subscription based.
Oh, they have,
Um,
yeah, it's more like, yeah, their ability to do multiplayer, kind of like PlayStation Plus, except their benefit or their like services are older games from the Nintendo SNES and Nintendo 64 now.
right. Their perks come from like the retro offers,
Yeah.
but it's still in some cases you're like, am I paying a subscription service that I shouldn't be for a multiplayer? Like, so there's that kind of aspect going on. But I don't know if Nintendo and Steam really are in the conversation today. Steam has publicly said that they're okay with like other other games and other developers and publishers like services and subscription services on Steam itself. Like you can see, I don't know if I have an exact example, but I think EA has certain
Oh
things
yeah,
going on
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that.
They do. They have their
Right.
like EA now, I think is what it might be called.
I wouldn't be surprised if, like, say, Ubisoft situation, showed up eventually on Steam as well. You know what I mean? Like, so there's different
EA
aspects to
Play.
that. Yeah, EA Play, right? And so I think it was an article I read recently with from just picking out quotes from Gabe Newell, just talking about generally what they're doing over there, and they said they're not really interested in themselves starting a subscription kind of based service, but they don't mind sort of opening that, so having Steam be an open platform for other subscription services. But that's kind of the what's going on with them on that front. So not really directly involved. And then you have like a wide variety of other players that we're going to be talking about today. Google with Stadia, Amazon with a couple of properties, Humble, Apple, and now Netflix has entered the mix as well. To some degree, I mean, you can kind of sort of say that they are de facto now a subscription service that because they offer games. So now they've sort of just become a player in the space based on, of course, they've always been a subscription service, but before it was just television and movies and I mean, like a different entertainment mediums. So, what does this mean to us as consumers? What does this mean to us as developers? Is what we're kind of want to go over today in the next hour or so. And I thought we start with the consumer side of things because first we have to kind of figure out why these services exist in the first place, why they're catching fire, why they're doing well, and why one in particular is doing well in the form of Xbox games, Game Pass. Um, because you could say that Xbox Game Pass is the turning point for Xbox in terms of like being a top-notch kind of console or hardware offering where it's been sort of considered an also ran for a very long time in terms of a lot of the circles I've been in anyway. And I'm not trying to get into a console debate or anything like that with that kind of thing, but rather that there's been a huge turning point with this Game Pass situation. And yeah, we can talk about some of the details in that, but from the consumer side, um, it's a pretty hard thing to pass up because from at least from the what we've seen from Xbox and a lot of other offerings like Prime Gaming, Humble Choice, they offer you a wide variety of games, essentially for free to keep. Some are for free via the service. Some are free to keep. Like I think Humble Choice says you can keep the games like for kind of in perpetuity, regardless of whether you keep your subscription or not.
I think
So
similar
that
with
different
Amazon Prime as well.
different perks there, right? Like different offerings there. But the main benefit is that you get to pay basically like a base 2 meals worth of money a month, maybe like $10 to $20, and you get a what feels like a treasure trove or a king's ransom of games to play back, and that's especially true for Xbox Games Pass, which has been sort of buoyed by the recent acquisitions that Microsoft has made with Bethesda and Activision Blizzard. So that's very interesting, like because from my perspective, when I have an Xbox One, I believe, and it's like I'm like lost in this series of like weird minor like half releases that they've done. But yeah, I have an Xbox One, and that was mostly like a one or two game slash entertainment media player for non-gaming stuff for such a long time. Now because of Game Pass, my and my kids being interested in new games, and now we have all this access essentially to games we wouldn't have access to otherwise, because we're probably not going to be paying 30, 40, 50, 60, $70 for these games individually, which is how we would traditionally get access to these games if we weren't, say, a content creator like Bumpy, who at least occasionally, if not routinely, gets free access to games because of his the channel he's built up, which he's earned, right? This is something that this is different because it's like I haven't earned necessarily this, but I'm paying my way into this like arena that I would normally not be able to do unless I wanted to shell out the amount of money that a hardcore spender kind of consumer in the games market would be and stuff. And that's generally not been me. So games like Doom Eternal, games like the new like NBA games, the new Madden, things like that I would never probably play because of I'm not just going to go out and buy that game individually. I now can download on my Xbox and try out and be like, oh, you know what? These games still have it, or oh, it's not really for me anymore. That kind of stuff. And it points to the fact that consumers, I think, really want to. I'm going to shut up in a second. Sorry, guys. It points to the fact that I think consumers really want to not have to buy before they try. A lot of people do not want to, especially with high amounts of money now. People do not want to throw 40, 50, $60 at a game unless they're really, really sure they want the game, right? Like, so that's going to be a huge obstacle for AAAs and indies alike, even if indies that are pricing even at like say $20 to $30 are still sort of considered high price by some percentage of consumers and stuff. So that in mind, like these kind of subscription services gives us as consumers a chance to play the games that maybe we would never get to play. And then on the flip side, as developers, we now get a wider net of brand recognition and people playing our game because they're on these these popular subscription services where a lot of people are now at least dipping their toe in the waters with our game where they normally would never have played it in the first place. So there's a lot going on here. There's a lot at play that's making this kind of the new thing. And there's some things going on that are a little scary. For sure, in terms of if you're a developer and you're looking at it and you're going, okay, this is the new future, or this is how it's going to work. There are some things that, as as a developer of a built-out IP, you might be able to take advantage of that. given the sort of competitive stuff going on. So there's a lot to discuss. That's my sort of diatribe, I guess, on my personal relation to subscription services so far is that the Xbox One is the one that stands out to me. The other ones seem interesting, but because of that sort of, oh, I own this Xbox thing, it sits in my thing, and now my kids, and now it's like this like set top that my kids can download games like Donut County and stuff like that, which is a fantastically cool indie game that my kids love. And again, never would have probably played it or found it without Game Pass. So that's just kind of where my consumer thought is, and then a little bit we'll get more into where we're thinking, how we're thinking about it from the development side of things.
Do you have any experience
Uh,
with any of the services so far, Tiny Disaster?
Honestly, I haven't used them much. I had PS Plus for a long time. I think just on my PS3. I don't know, time is weird. And I wasn't even using it. It was just kind of like, oh, I'm enjoying collecting these games to one day play. And then even now, all those subscription services are kind of a one day thing for me. Of like, oh, if I ever get through my backlog of Steam games, I'd love to try some of the stuff they have on Apple Arcade or just something. Or just gonna block out some time, play a bunch, and not pay for it forever. But it's something I find interesting, and it's probably going to be the future of something or other. It's not something I've really used.
All right, now for me, I've obviously I'm in a slightly different situation, as a couple alluded to, that I do get the vast majority of what I cover and play from developers, publishers, PR folk, specifically. So, and I'm not quite one of those folks that are, I need a physical copy of every game. I want physical, I want physical, I want physical. There's people out there that do that. They want to collect and all that stuff. And that's great for the folks that want to do that. Sometimes they're paying an arm and leg for it, but again, hey, more power to them. They want that physical collection, right? I like the idea of, and I realize even through Steam and other services, technically we don't own our game. If Steam failed, it would go away, but it's unlikely that that'll happen anytime soon. And I don't know, like I still feel like when I buy a game on Steam, I own the game on Steam. So I'm not tied to the whims of, well, these games are free this month, these games are free this month, where you don't get to keep them afterward. So I did get to experience that way back in the day. This is before any of this stuff ever existed. Just want to shout out to Sega once again for being the industry leader ahead of its time. I had the Sega channel back when I was a small child. Well, I guess a young teenager. And you paid a service, it connected through your cable, and then you had this device you plugged into your Sega Genesis, and you had access to X number of games every month, and then they would cycle those through. So it was like great. It's like, oh, cool. So then it became like that situation where you didn't used to have local saves on things. You would leave your Genesis on through the turn of the month, so you would keep the game that you were playing, because whenever it would reset, you would go back in and do it. So like I got to experience that, and I did really hate losing things that I was really enjoying playing. So that was always kind of a bummer, and it's always been kind of one of my, in the back of my head, fears. It's like, all right, I want to play this game. Oh, it's only here until, such and such time. Am I gonna miss out on it? Am I gonna be able to finish it in time? So on and so forth. Missy has told us a bunch of stuff here. Humble didn't feel as much as a subscription, since you can decide each month if you want the bundle or not. I know they have added access to their own published games through their own client, but you didn't try that out. Big fan of Donut Country, or yeah, Country County,
Yep.
County. And that is the thing that holds you back not joining Xbox Game Pass. Those games are temporary, so you have to play them now if you want to play them and not pay extra for them. Yeah.
It's just kind of like as Bumpy alluded to, they have that revolving door that you're like, there's always something good in the pile that you have. And yeah, you're right. I don't think that you do. I mean, but they've extended it to PC now, so it's even like,
Yeah.
So if you have a Game Pass deal now, you can actually because Microsoft is Microsoft, they own both the Xbox console and obviously Windows. They cover both sides there in a really nice way. The temporary thing is definitely something to consider.
And there's definitely value there. Like, there's no question. There is tremendous value from that. So,
and yeah, like you said, with Steam, there are some sort of workarounds to maybe pull at least some indie games off of there and have them on your computer and have them on your own thing. But that's a manual thing you have to do. And like you said, Bumpy, at some point, maybe Steam does nuke itself or something happens where it's just not there anymore. So that's always a scary thing. Something to keep in mind, not something that we expect to happen really at all, as Bumpy alluded to. It's just not a big worry. So it does feel like you own the games. I totally agree with that. And if it didn't, if suddenly things changed and it didn't, there'd be a lot more people than just you and I that would be upset and angry about that, of course. So
I feel like they would have to do something. I mean, this is speculation, but they'd have to do something where Steam would convert to a download service where you would download the games and not just have it on Steam's servers and all that stuff. So you would like log into Steam and then you could download the games instead of running through the Steam client. I assume something like that would happen if Steam's like, all right, we're done. But again, no idea, right? That would be your hope, right? That you'd somehow still be able to access something.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Valve would ever try to, do that in a way that was in bad faith, right? Like, so, it just doesn't make sense with it would be like Valve sold itself to someone who sucked and they took over. Yeah. That's the only way I could see that happening, which Valve doesn't want to sell itself. So
Missy's
I believe
saying FOMO on steroids, the fear of missing out on steroids.
Yeah,
it's kind of
sure. There is some of that, but I mean, I guess if you're super intense on it with all the updates and stuff like that, and I gotta play this game this time, yeah, you're gonna get like kind of in that grinder. Yeah. I personally like the idea of just sort of hopping it on every once in a while when you feel like it and seeing what's there and saying, cool, let's try this out. And just kind of taking a more laid back approach to it. But I mean, that's not for everybody, obviously. And it's not necessarily how I feel all the time about it. So I totally get it. Because sometimes you're like, oh God, there's so many good games. I got to try them all. It definitely feels like that. I will say that when I mentioned Humble, we were mentioning Humble Choice, which is Humble's current subscription service, which is very similar to Prime Gaming. And a few other, actually kind of similar to Xbox Games Pass, but a little more, I think, again, like we mentioned, permanent.
It might have changed, but it wasn't like 12 games every month that they chose at random, and you just paid one flat fee and you got it, which was different than the bundles themselves, I believe.
Right, and I think the games are permanently owned, but usually they're going to be a little more anonymous, like not as many like notable AAAs versus, sort of AAs and indies. Likely great games still. But likely not at the level of, say, the notoriety that a lot of the games have with Xbox. So anyway, talking about sort of, let's see here. I don't even want to know. I just got to figure out where I want to start on these notes here. So it's a thing where I think we've kind of pointed this out. In general, people are flocking to these subscription services. There is a little bit of bloat going on, as you guys are probably feeling like I am. Like I have 9 different subscription services or something like that. All told.
Yeah.
And like most of them are like entertainment, television, movie, medium type stuff. But you throw on the Xbox Game Pass, audiobooks, $15 every month, just like random stuff like that. So it kind of adds up. And we're going to have that kind of, you don't want a monopoly for sure, which is, from any perspective, like Xbox is sort of out in front right now. But I think that, with what we're reading about PlayStation, what they could offer is uniquely different than what Xbox could offer, obviously. So they have a lot of, they're not quite Nintendo, but they do have quite a stable of, first party IP. And that PlayStation 1 and 2 era is also there to take advantage of, which is kind of what we're talking about here with Spartacus, which Spartacus is the code name reportedly. This is from Polygon. That's like PlayStation's subscription service that they're trying to get ready to compete with Xbox Game Pass. And so the reports quotes, Sony's reportedly planning a new subscription service aimed at competing with Microsoft's popular Xbox Game Pass, according to Bloomberg. So this is coming from Bloomberg, I guess. Reportedly, I didn't get the source. My bad. Bloomberg, shout out. Reportedly, codenamed Spartacus, the unannounced subscription service could offer access to retro PlayStation games on top of existing PlayStation Plus and PlayStation Now benefits. So that's something that I kind of wanted to get into next is how these subscription services are kind of staying relevant and staying popular is that for the most part, the ones that are succeeding have something kind of uh, unique or special to add to the equation.
Essentially console exclusive, right? It's just like the whole reason people buy consoles in general. It's because console exclusivity and PCs are so expensive, right? Those are the two big things.
I think that's a big thing. I think with Xbox and PlayStation, those owners are naturally going to be built into buying into these subscriptions, which are hard to pass up when you look at sort of the value of it. So that's why you've had the Xbox Game Pass, I think, explode, and then now that it's offered on PC, it's probably getting more, just kind of getting bigger and bigger. And then with PlayStation, when they'll get to offer, if they get to offer that's kind of new one, like coming out where we get to access a lot of different. That would pull me, someone who was a big PlayStation 1 and 2 era person, like back in. Like, so to that, I would consider getting a console for that. You know what I mean? Like a PS5 or whatever I could.
Yeah, the backwards compatibility is always something that's been. People are like, they love the idea even now of getting games ported from the older systems. Nintendo's doing this with some of their games. Just like original Nintendo game now ported for the Switch, and you can buy the Switch game. Like the original Fire Emblem was one of those.
And this is another discussion point for a different day, but video game history is so tenuous in terms of being able to maintain it, being able to keep it, the relics that we want to keep around. Companies a lot of times will hold IPs hostage or in the balance, kind of like their fate in the balance. And there's other things that go on where things might be deleted entirely, code might be lost forever, that kind of stuff on games that really meant a lot to a certain section of people at some time in their lives. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting to talk about that sometime. Maybe we should have that as a subject kind of discussion down the road, like video game history and how to preserve it a little bit better. If you look out in Twitter land, you will find some people that are really into the video game history preservation. Sorry. Like PlayStation, they can obviously offer some really unique things on their side. You have Amazon with Prime Gaming, which is basically just like a side benefit to having a Prime account in the first place, I believe, right? So, if you have an Amazon Prime account, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're wanting to cash in on this Prime Gaming thing, but you just sort of discover that you have access to this.
Forgetting I have it.
Amazon Prime, okay, this is why it sucks, because Amazon is dominating so much. Is that Amazon Prime, and I'm sure that the services now are less than they were when they originally started, and I'm sure that it costs more now than I know it costs more now than it originally started. But when they started Prime, it was like, God, that's such a good deal. That's going to crush so many people. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's such a good deal. It covers such a wide variety of consumers, right? Like it's like this is just, it's groceries, it's cosmetics, it's it's just it's things that you'd get in hardware stores, it's everything, right? And so and you get all these people just jumping on board with it, and then they start getting involved with games, they buy Twitch, they get Prime Gaming going, and so like Prime Gaming now, it's like, you think about it from the developer side or whatever, it's like Prime Gaming seems enticing because you just know a lot of people have it, right? Like even if it's passively, you know that there's, I mean, you can't it's not quite the same confirmation as like, hey, if we get on Xbox Game Pass, we know we'll be seeing a lot of traffic through there, but it is pretty assuring knowing that like that platform basically carries itself through some of its other properties as well. So let's see what else. Oh, Amazon also has a platform called Luna, which I think is more of a like in competition with Google Stadia type of thing. Which Stadia and Luna are both, I believe, cloud-based to some degree. Yeah. Luna's working on Proton, I believe. As far as like what the platform, so to speak, iOS or OS, is making that kind of go, but. That's a thing that is sort of still being, the technologies, we've talked about this before, right, is still being developed on that front and perfected, for sure, like still fine-tuned, still has a ways to go for fine-tuning and such, but does seem to be catching on. full disclosure, Cook Serve Delicious 3 is on Amazon Luna, so we've had some dealings with them. And it's not something that I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go out and endorse like Luna now and stuff like that. But like, they're a viable platform partner or platform holder partner that you can work in that regard for the subscription service. TD mentioned Apple Arcade, which is a very interesting one because of how it's sort of evolved over the last I don't know, how long has this existed? 4 years, maybe? Like tops? I think maybe 3-4 years. So Manifold Garden was a launch title for Apple Arcade, and that game came out, I believe, like 3 years ago, right? Bumpy, somewhere in there. Like, I mean, it's losing track of time at this point. But
it might have been 3. It might have been
I think
well,
like 2
early
to 3
access
range.
though, right? It came out in, or not? No, it came out with Epic and Apple Arcade at the same time.
And a year later on Steam. So if you look at the Steam date, it's a year before that.
Okay, let's take a look here. Manifold. It was 2020, so yeah, 3 years. It was October 20th, 2020.
So when they first came out with Apple Arcade, they were looking for like those kind of like titles, like really unique, potentially artistic, stood out in a crowd. But they found that they didn't have a whole lot of retention because a lot of those games, weren't
Replayable.
The replayable gameplay loops that a lot of people like are looking for now, like or games as a service, et cetera, et cetera. So things have shifted pretty wildly from that point to where they're. If you look at it now, Apple Arcade is a lot of more casual games, a lot more like. I'm going to bring up this list here. Someone kill like 1 minute of time for me while I bring up this list of current Apple Arcade.
It's impossible.
I've got Apple Arcade pulled up on my iPad here. Just I was curious again if
Can you read some of the titles that you're looking at, like right now,
so
in terms of what are featured? Yeah.
Top games is Sneaky Sasquatch. We've got just Solitaire, Bloons, Crayola Create and Play, Bridge Constructor, Angry Birds, Fruit Ninja Classic, Wildflower, Sonic Racing, Mini Motorways, which is what made me take notice of this because paying for a month of Apple Arcade is the same as what I would have paid to get Mini Motorways on Steam, and I could play a bunch of other things. Shadow Blade and Pac-Man Party Royale are the top 12.
So we have a lot of name brand recognition there. We have a lot of I think you mentioned Solitaire and a few other just kind of casual evergreen, kind of hits.
And lately I've wondered of are they getting new players based on the kind of mass switch off of Spotify? Did more people sign up for Apple One to go to Apple Music and just see? Then you get boomers who are just oh, Solitaire, great. Now I have something to play on my iPad.
That's definitely happening to some degree, I would imagine. And then, were there any games on there with the plus symbol by them at the end of the game or the title? Do you see blah 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 plus or anything like that?
Yeah.
So do you know what that denotes?
I do not.
Okay, so that's this new thing that Apple Arcade is apparently doing as well. So now they're having slightly modified versions of these games that are called blah 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 plus. So hypothetically, Cook Serve Delicious Plus would be a game that would be on Apple Arcade that would then have a few tweaks and features for that platform specifically. So the Plus game is in kind of indicate. I think there's if you two have heard me mention this game before, Hidden Folks. It's kind of a Where's Waldo kind of an active Where's Waldo game.
Nope.
I've played that one, yeah.
Yeah, there's Hidden Folks Plus now on Apple Arcade. So that's the same game, I believe, overall, but potentially some specific features for Apple Arcade and maybe some exclusive content. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's where Apple Arcade is looking now, is that they want sort of games tailor-made for their platform. If you're an indie and you have sort of a notable, unique, standout kind of game, specifically if it has some replayability to it, or at least has a lot of hours to it that people can sink in. But there's also games with in-app purchases on there that are doing well. And so it is still kind of that mobile hybrid that you would expect to see from Apple. And here it is, finally. Okay, so some of the games that they have on tap for February, so the games that have come out. NBA 2K 2022, Hidden Folks Plus, Solitaire, like you mentioned, Plus, the Oregon Trail, Sneaky Sasquatch, you mentioned, Spades Card Game Plus, Song Pop Party Plus, Lego Star Wars Battles, Nickelodeon Extreme Tennis. I believe many of these were mentioned. Mahjong Titan Plus, Lego Star Wars, Solitaire Stories, Master Chef Let's Cook. Okay, let's go. Cooks are delicious. Master Chef looking at you. Spire Blast, Kingdom Rush, Frontier TD Plus, Hearts Card Game Plus, Sudoku Simple Plus. So you get the idea. There is a space here for indies, but you can see the kind of games that are now competing, and doing well, and what Apple's looking for, I guess. What Apple specifically is going to be looking for additions for the Apple Arcade. So that was a little bit kind of a side road there, but nice to get a little bit of coverage on what's going on the side with Apple. The only one we haven't mentioned yet, I don't believe, is Netflix, which is a recent development, obviously. As of maybe 6 months ago, we knew that they were getting involved, maybe a little bit longer, that they were going to be getting involved with games. And as of maybe 3 months ago or less, I can't remember when it started, they started posting mobile games available on the platform itself. I believe through phones only. So you wouldn't see it on your TV or anything like that. You'd only see it if you were using a mobile device, like potentially an iPad maybe as well, but like a phone. This has people going, oh, is this a new avenue potentially for games that would fit the mold of a mobile game? You can't just say, oh, I have a purely PC game or purely a console game and expect it to work out, I think, on Netflix right now. It looks like you need something like, again, coming from Vertigo side, just as an example, Cooks Are Delicious 3 is not really a mobile game. Cooks Are Delicious 1 is. So that's the difference there. And if we were going to bring it to like a new service, we might need to update it, like the original Cooks Are Delicious, to get it out there, like on those new platforms. So that's something to keep in mind. That I think Netflix, you kind of think the same as Apple Arcade, which is like, how can I tailor this game that I already have a little bit further for the platform, coming from the developer side of things. Anyway.
Yeah, it looks like the Netflix one is for Android and iOS friendly mobile games. Currently are available on those when you log into your Netflix profile. So
thank you for tracking that info down. I hadn't actually looked myself.
And all you need is a Netflix subscription. There's no ads, no additional fees, no in-app purchases. And don't let the Demogorgon tell you otherwise. Comedy. It's there, I guess. It's fine. And a bunch of other random stuff. But yeah, just a quick search on it, essentially. It says, let the games begin a new way to experience entertainment on mobile. So that's basically all it is.
Yeah, I'd looked through it before, just because I noticed it one day randomly. I'm like, oh, I guess that's here now.
Yeah.
And I've yet to actually try to play anything, but it's there. It looks nice enough. It's Netflix.
Yeah, as of the end of last year.
So is this going to cause other non-games platform, subscription services to start shifting as well and diversifying? Thinking of like, Hulu and, other types of like, TV apps and movie apps. We'll see. It might, if Netflix, gains further ground in this area. So, or, it looks like a financial success for them or a win for them. So we'll see. I don't know. But Missy mentions that Sock Pop is another one where you receive the games. That's a $3 subscription. As I'm seeing, and it's actually available. Like you can even purchase it through itch.io. I don't know anything about that, so I can't necessarily speak for it. But
heard of it before either.
That's interesting. But yeah, interesting, and thank you for mentioning it. And yeah, I gotta imagine there's probably dozens and dozens and dozens of more, more of these either out there or people forming ideas behind how they're going to roll out their particular subscription service.
Well,
again,
you look at TV.
If you don't,
right?
Yeah, go ahead.
TV or started with Netflix. Essentially, was the first streaming service. Then Disney's like, oh yeah, boom, we got Disney Plus. And then NBC's like, hey, let's they're Peacock, right? I think it's NBC. They're like, hey, we have Peacock now. That's our streaming service. And there's going to be other networks like ABC and all these other things that are probably all going to come out with different things. I'm sure
And they already
HBO
have.
probably
Yeah.
has all that. And
Yes. Yep.
it's just like, it's insane to me that this is all kind of happening, but at the same time, cable, I guess, has continually gotten more expensive over the years because fewer and fewer people are using it. Therefore, they're jacking the prices up for people who do have it. And now you kind of can build your own. I only really watch these three networks. So you get three streaming services, and it only costs you $30 as opposed to having to pay like $80 for cable or whatever. So like I kind of get it, but at the same time it's scary because before you just had a bundle with everything in it and you could watch whatever you wanted and go everywhere else. And I feel like that's going to bleed over into, and already has, into the gaming realm where soon every company's going to have their own streaming thing. I mean, we already have it with EA, we already have it with Ubisoft, we already have it with, I mean, I guess Epic doesn't really have it. There's another one, but I can't remember there's like a third one that's got its own stuff that it
Epic's
puts
worth
out.
mentioning because they do a free game, a free game every week now, or at least multiple, and maybe multiple free
With
products
Epic,
every week. Yeah.
But there's
So
no
they're
subscription for that. You just basically have the client.
no, you have to have an Epic account. That's it. That's all.
I think it might have to be verified now too, right? You have to have a phone
but you
number
don't.
attached.
Right, but no purchase necessary, I believe. Yep. So, yeah, that's actually a totally viable and fair point, Bumpy, is
A
that
little scary.
it's gonna be where the game you want, you're gonna have to look up, just like I look up, where is this movie right now?
Yeah.
Where can I access this movie? Or this show I want to watch really bad.
It's like, do I go to Netflix? Do I go to Prime? Do I go to Disney Plus? Where is it?
Do I own it? No.
Yeah.
Or yes or no. And if no, do I want to pay for the service that it's currently on? So I mean, yeah, that is not a utopia.
Well,
you know what I mean?
Then on top of that, you have
flip
like
side.
Prime, where they have like premium editions that you buy like new movies on and stuff. So
yeah,
and then you get to keep it or whatever digitally somehow. So
yeah, what were you gonna say, TD?
Just that TV and movies isn't the only industry we've seen go through this already. If you look at music, it's a very different thing of like everybody just has one service because every service has most of the music you'd be looking for. So you're looking at Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and you just kind of pick one, which doesn't seem likely for games, but you're seeing every entertainment industry is moving this way.
Right.
And like you've seen all the conversations around like how much artists are getting paid per listen on Spotify, but also factoring in when we all used to just download it on Napster and not pay anybody anything.
Right.
So, and we already have Steam, which has kind of made gaming seem more affordable because you just know you're going to wait for the next sale kind of thing. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where the gaming industry lands.
Yeah, I mean, if as long as games continue to discount themselves like decently and not atrociously, I feel like people will still purchase individual games through that mechanism, or at least like a core group will continue to go that way, that route, wanting to have that control, wanting to have that ownership, and not wanting to have that monthly fee necessarily associated with their account all the time. Like that's something that does kind of, you can put it in the back of your mind, but it depends on what's going on in your life and your finances and stuff. So,
well, the thing that also makes me worried too about, like you mentioned, music. Music is essentially, I feel like the music industry is like the slowest of the entertainment industries because, like, look at Twitch, for instance, with it having people playing music nonstop. There was never an issue with it for years and years and years and years. And YouTube started that way, and then they're like, no, copyright. Now, Twitch is basically the land of the dead. If you play licensed music, you're going to get in trouble, DMCA takedowns, all that stuff. But it's like, back just fairly recently in movies and videos, TV shows, it was Netflix. It was like the only thing to do. Now there's all these branching paths, and now there's a few different services with Spotify, Amazon's music, and the iTunes, all that stuff. So but those all, like you said, basically have the same thing, so it doesn't really matter. But what's going to happen when certain artists only sign with a certain quote unquote streaming label, and then they're just going to start that whole thing, then you're going to have multiples of all that. And it's just, I say it's good that the music industry is a little bit slower because stuff like that's not going to happen. But I feel like for video gaming, it's already starting. And, obviously for movies and TV shows, it's already begun as well. So
For gaming, we kind of started there as an industry in terms of exclusives. It was always you had to have this until very recently. You had to have certain platforms to play certain games.
Yep.
So
that's always been the thing that I don't like. Like I would probably never own a console if everything was just released on PC or on everything. There'd be no real reason for me.
We're getting there.
Yeah, but sadly, Nintendo exists.
It just makes me think about the like the societal differences of like copywriting, like you said, trademarking. Like what if all the music labels like played ball and just let streamers like play their music on there and earn little bits of money from every time it was played or something like that.
I think sign a deal with Twitch. That would be brilliant.
But you just think about how open source, like I think about like an open source world and how different it would be versus what it is now. Like obviously like getting Sonic in your Mario and Mario in your Sonic and all that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously there is a Sonic Mario thing, but like I'm saying, like obviously having way more crossovers, having way more just sort of it's just an interesting thing to think about and sort of also sad, but like not sad because it would make it different and there would be problems with it too. Like because that's the thing with trademark and copyright. Like specifically like Disney copyrights, they don't want to see you do something crude with their characters. That's just kind of their thing with their trademarks. That's like one of their big things. They don't want to see fan arts and things like that, and people just taking them and making them like their own things and stuff like that. That's like why certain things are Nintendo in particular is very protective over their their stuff. So anything that's like public facing, anything that's like official, that's not from Nintendo, that's like related to Mario, it just doesn't exist. So it just doesn't.
Unless you're in like some random, I guess Eastern countries do that more. You go to like Korea and you have like Korean Mario and stuff like that. You're like, what?
Oh yeah, like
real
sort of
real knockoff stuff, just like Korean Spider-Man and stuff. I'm like what?
Huh.
So Missy's saying makes her wonder when YouTube will join the gaming subscription thing. She doesn't count Stadia, and especially since they're over there trying to double dip with subscriptions plus costs per game. So
interesting. I didn't realize that they were doing that. Okay.
All
so
I remember was when it originally launched, how it just got obliterated by anyone who tried it.
Google will need to find a way to show value or offer value there, obviously, I think, before that thing catches on. So, but they're Google, so it's not like they have like a short rope.
I think they're giving it like all right, we'll kind of go with this, and they're going to do something else. I feel like they launched it, and they're like, all right, we're going to support it, kind of, but not really get behind it situation.
If it doesn't go great, you just evolve it when you know what you need to do to make it better. So, I mean, that's what I would think. But we'll see. I mean, you never know. So, yeah, go on, just kind of just running over the notes quickly. And also, any questions in chat, or Misty, if you have anything specifically about this subscription services that you wanted to add, please let us know. But I'm basically in like review mode of my notes right now because I think we have basically gone over a lot of the stuff that I wanted to talk about.
One thing I was wondering what kind of information there is now is about how developers are getting paid for this versus, and I know it's going to be kind of similar across industries, but
that's what I was going to say, because you said we kind of all talked about consumer side of things, but for the developer standpoint, we haven't actually heard that yet. So
we've done bits and pieces only for the developer part. That's a great point. We need to talk about like internally how to go about this. So obviously, right now with the competing services, that's a point of leverage. You can, if you have something that's like special or unique in a game, maybe a genre that's underrepresented but critically clamored for on a platform. With us at Vertigo, we're hoping that Cook Serve Delicious is like a game that is like a good game in an underrepresented platform or underrepresented genre for a lot of these platforms, because we don't feel like there's a ton of like great or cooking games, or even if there are a few on there, there's not like a mass number of them or anything like that. So we feel like we're able to compete in that situation. So it's not like you need to have the shiniest shiny of a game. You just need to have a game that you feel like you can leverage with what kind of subscription platform you're going for, whether it be Xbox Game Pass, Humble Choice, Prime Gaming, and then you're trying to get into the room essentially with having a conversation with these individuals, the owners, the company, or not the owners, but like the developer relations folks that are looking to make these kind of deals for their companies. Now, the best way to get contact with these folks is generally like have an in somehow with them in some prior relationship, like, or maybe some friend of a friend or some developer group that can point you in the right direction is the best way to approach. But if you don't have that, short of that, you're going to want to do a little bit of just research online and see who the developer relations or the content strategy is, like strategists is a title I see a lot of times for people that look for these developers and games to bring to their services. And you're going to want to try to get a hold of them in some way. A lot of them are on LinkedIn. Some of them are on Twitter. Some of them have open DMs. Some of them list email addresses. So that's kind of where you want to start if you want to try to pitch, your game for a service. And I think you really need to think about how your game is valuable to the service that you're pitching to specifically. And it might be different. It might be the same game that's valuable to multiple different services for different reasons. And you should really think about that and have that as part of your, individual pitches for each company that you're considering reaching out to. And the money and what we're talking about here in terms of a deal, TD and Bumpy, is that we're talking about instead of that long game of selling copy after copy and banking daily revenue and all that kind of stuff, looking for a lump sum that will essentially carry your company over and guarantee that you're going to earn the revenue that you need to earn for this game. So it's very enticing from the developer standpoint to get these kind of deals in place. And it's good.
Sorry, do you know if it's like a contractual for a year, we're going to have this on the service and we'll pay you this much money, and then you re-up and maybe they assess how well it did or didn't do, or how does that work? Do you know?
I think for the most part it's going to differ. It's mileage may vary for the platform, and each deal is unique in itself as well. It's important to remember that indies really can get fleeced if they're not paying attention on this and not get value for their products, because they might get like a lowball offer
that they just throw out as like an automatic, like, this is what we offer for indies, and they're like, oh
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
You should be aware that haggling is not only an option, but it's almost like a mandatory thing that you should be considering doing. Like, you should be thinking, this is the amount that I want. And when they say the amount that they want and it's so much lower, then you better find somewhere where you agree in the middle. That's called negotiating, and that's totally fine to do. You shouldn't be afraid of doing that. I think that's a big thing that indies have trouble with when they step into a room with somebody that's representing a big a big corporation. I totally get that, but you have to kind of find your steeliness to get in there, or hire someone that will help you with that, or do it themselves, like as your mouthpiece to do that. So to stand up for your product and make sure that you're getting the value for it. But yeah, you're looking for anywhere between right now, because we're getting to a point where it's not the early days on all these things, and a lot of the things that we're getting to, like maybe the middle, maybe not late game or anything like that with these services or anything like that in terms of how they're progressing. But Xbox is like, how like Switch was really, we talked about how Switch was really good like a few years ago in terms of if you were one of the first few indie games on that platform, you could benefit just from being there.
Yeah.
That's the same with Steam and other things we talked about before. That's not true anymore, right? It's very competitive. There's too many products and stuff. So kind of similarly, outfits like Xbox don't necessarily have to offer like the same offers that they were making to developers a couple of years ago for Game Pass, right? When they were first trying to get the subscription service established, they would spend more money in that time investing more money into the individual games that they're putting into than they might now, because they're doing better, they're doing well. They don't need to invest that amount of money. So you have to keep that in mind when you get into these things, because you'll hear a lot of different numbers thrown out if you actually research it. There's actually, and I think there is some publicly posted stuff out there, particularly Epic's free payments. Yeah. So like it's because of the Epic and Apple trial, it was publicly listed at some point the money amounts that Epic was giving to the free game offers and this is very similar. It's not exactly the same, but we're talking about the same, effectively the same kind of offers that you'd be seeing in the subscription service type of situation. And Bumpy, I'm not sure. It could be 1 year. It's usually probably 2+, and it's not necessarily a perpetuity for the most part, but you could certainly sign a contract where you're like, just keep it on your service for as long as it's running, and just as long as I get the money up front. A lot of developers wouldn't care, I don't think, to be honest.
So they would like just pay you every year or something on end for however long they keep it on the service.
It could be that, or it could just be like, we're going to give you this up front, and then if your game gets a certain amount of plays per month,
you can do something.
Get some additional type of stuff. Yeah, I've seen that happen in at least 1 or 2 platforms.
So there's a little bit of wiggle room with how you can negotiate. So if there's more interest than maybe expected, just like like a contract like with the sponsored video I did, it was here's the money up front, and if you hit this many views, there's gonna be a bonus essentially.
Yep.
So same type of situation.
But from my experience, the indie dev is just trying to accumulate the amount that they need from the lump sum, and then they just don't care afterwards. Because I've worked for a couple of developers that they just do not care in terms of the hits, the sales, or whatever's going on after they get the deal done.
Point, right? They probably already dealt with that for however many years they've been developing games. Now they're like, I got paid. If I get paid more, that's great, but I don't have to worry about it.
But we've hit the home. But more or less, instead of hitting a bunch of singles by selling copy after copy after copy, doing sales for months and months and months, we've hit the home run.
Yep.
And now we can look forward and go to the next project, as opposed to having to consider how to continue figuring out how to milk our current products that are out there and stuff. So it's a really wonderful thing, obviously, for a developer to be able to feel that kind of security, to be able to move forward without saying, okay, now we have to continue to just think not in the past, but continue to think about our current releases and how they're going to make money and how we're going to continue to promote them. Because in 2022, where we're at, it does make a lot of sense. Like from, again, just my perspective, it still makes a lot of sense for us to promote Cook Serve Delicious 3. It's our latest game. Yeah, it's been out for a while, but still people don't. I mean, because of brand recognition and how hard that is as an indie, and how much competition is out there, and how much we have a world that doesn't just turn the page like quickly, like they're doing it like a flip book now, like a society. You need to get your game out there as terms of we exist, like again and again and again. So
we saw with the Steam Remote Play Together event that just ended how much traffic came through for CSD3. So there is still interest, or at least people checking it out.
Synergized with a bunch of TikTok views of people who were like, "What is this game? I've never heard of this before." So, we're entering essentially new platforms that haven't seen our game before at all in any way, and we're also benefiting from platforms like Steam, where a lot of people have seen our game, but a lot of even more and more and more haven't, and they're getting exposed to that now because of the proper promotion and the way Steam's algorithm works. We talked about this recently. What have you done for me lately? If you're getting more traffic and more wish lists to your page, you're going to show up better in promotions and features and festivals and things of that sort. This was talked about in like a Next Fest thing recently, was that a lot of the games that were kicking butt in Next Fest last month were already, had pre-greased the situation, released the demo a couple weeks in advance, gotten a bunch of people to wish list already, made major pushes. And so basically when it was time to hit the go button on Steam Next Fest, Steam's natural algorithms were like, whoa, these games are performing excellently. Let's put them near the top. And then they just take off even further.
They'd already done the prep work there. I think one of the things that I guess I would be concerned with is you'd have to kind of know the value of your game. Obviously, that's always a concern, but say, for instance, you didn't realize, and you created RimWorld, you didn't realize how big it was going to be. And And then you went in and you're like, oh, yeah, I'll sign up for Xbox Game Pass. We'll put it out on that. If it was like a viable thing to do that. Well, it would be, because it's PC, right? So, and then you're like, oh, I could have made like millions of dollars, and I only made a few thousand, or maybe 100,000, or whatever the deal would be. So that's one of those things you really kind of need to know the value of the game, and or maybe even delay and see how the initial sales go. And then would you recommend releasing your game normally first and then coming to a service later? Is that something you would probably do?
Kind of. Here's what I would suggest. You're on the right. I'm totally thinking you're on the right track here. So with RimWorld, before it went on Steam, right? It had sold, I think, 250,000 copies.
It was super huge even before, yeah.
Yes, which is more than $1 million, obviously, selling at what it was selling on pre-release. So much more, like millions of dollars already. So knowing you have points of leverage, right? Like things that are very clear points of leverage, like that, right? That would be a very clear and evident data point to bring to the table of a negotiation, right? It's like, dude, game is selling in pre-release like out the window. It has a huge community already established. These kind of points of leverage speak, volumes to developer relations and content strategists for these platform holders. But there's also less tangible things that you can tie yourself to. Like I had mentioned before with Cook Serve Delicious, I feel at least, and this is something that can be argued. It doesn't necessarily have to be fact, but I feel personally, I would pitch that we are a high quality game in a less represented genre that people want to play. That people do want to play this game and people do want to play cooking games, but there's not that many of them and there's not that many good ones. Yeah. And so I feel like when we go into negotiations, that's a point of leverage for us. It's not necessarily like, oh, even if we have hard data on Cook Serve Delicious 3 has sold this many copies and it's sort of impressive, but not massively impressive. Well, if you are taking Cook Serve Delicious 3 on your platform for the first time, you're not just bringing Cook Serve Delicious 3 onto the platform, you're bringing Cook Serve Delicious, the IP, onto the platform, right? So that is a point of leverage I think that I bring up a lot of times as well. Again, could be arguable. The other side could say, well, we don't necessarily agree with you on that. And I'm like, that's fine, but that's my conviction, is that I feel like if you're bringing the first time a Cook Serve Delicious game on there, you're getting more value than just that game alone, that product alone, if you understand what I'm saying. And it's and again, it's hard to necessarily translate that into the full numbers of it and stuff like that. But it's like, if you look at this, if you want me to get a little more into the nitty gritty about it, if someone wanted to push back on me on that, I would say, well, let's look at the data, the sales data from the entire
series,
series, as opposed to just the third one when we're considering kind of that. And then it would be like, now it seems like you're not giving me enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that would be where you would kind of find your points of leverage. But if you don't know them yet, if you're still in that proof of concept phase, right, Bumpy, and you haven't kind of gotten those intangible or more importantly tangible, like actual data points that suggest, hey, this thing is valuable and you need to be able to extract the value. But the one thing you can always hold true to, Bumpy, is that if RimWorld, say, like, and this is a unique kind of thing and situation, but talking about RimWorld, if they had launched on Xbox Game Pass, say in a world where Xbox Game Pass existed, when RimWorld hit 1.0, I still think it would sell a ton of copies individually retail through like Steam, etc., that kind of thing. It wouldn't necessarily, it would hamper it to some degree, but maybe it wouldn't. Maybe it would actually, the benefit of being on a Game Pass situation would actually cause more people to buy it. On PC, there's this strange effect. I know you know about it, Bumpy. I've told you about it before from my perspective, that sometimes you buy two games on the same game rather on two different platforms because you like the ability to play one of your favorite games in different situations.
Yeah, you have friends on one platform versus the other. Yeah, I get you.
Yeah. And so, like, having a roguelike on PC and there's a Switch version of it. I can take it on the road with me, that kind of thing. So like that's definitely something that's going on. And I mean, just there's a lot of little details and nuances to it, and it's gonna matter to you based on you depending on what your product is about and what your game is about, and what points of leverage it has, right? Like what benefits it has. What can you say that the players are going to like this, and sometimes even more importantly, or just as important, maybe not more importantly, but like, how does this like mesh well with the platform? Like, even when we're not talking about subscription services, like when we're making a Switch version of a game, we really are trying to pitch Nintendo on how this works really well for the Switch. This makes great sense for the Switch. This is so good. We should totally be on Switch because look at all these things. Look at all the things that we're interacting with, all the little Switch features that we're going to, be including, all that kind of stuff. That gets platform holders and, the people that we talked about really excited about, booking you on a reasonable fee. Again, reasonable can be a wide amount of money. Like, you have to understand that these guys are usually working with fund money. Guys like Microsoft and Epic, they have a lot of money. And I'm not trying to say that like, go rip them off because they're not going to be about that. They know their value, and I mean they know your value to some degree. At least have you bracketed. And so you shouldn't go in there trying to rob anybody. But again, you shouldn't be afraid of asking for an amount that you feel at first might be like even reprehensible to yourself. Like it's like, oh, $150,000. That seems like really high. It's like, well, easy there, because there's a lot of people that are getting that amount of money that probably have your level of game, or even smaller, or less notable, that kind of stuff. So I'm running into a lot of developers that are not willing to properly value themselves or their products when going to these negotiations, and they take maybe 3 times, 4 times, 5 times less. TD?
So I know you've got to get going soon, so Missy has a hypothetical to just kind of round things out. Would it potentially work for a game platform to use something more like the Spotify model of getting paid for playtime? Makes me wonder if that could work for indie games. And I was wondering that as well, because in the book world, there's Kindle Unlimited, where authors who opt in to be exclusive to that platform then get paid per page read.
I think so. So I think my perspective on it is that the rich would get richer, and the ones that did get a whole lot of play in the first place would not benefit from that at all. I think that there actually has been some versions of this in games. I think Chrono GG might have some version of this to some degree with their service. Again, so many services.
Yeah,
but
they even existed when they changed their business model.
Right. And the idea that you're getting paid for how much clicks. So the people that are the games that are getting featured all the time are going to be getting, obviously the most amount of play time, unless of course they're trash, and then of course they won't be featured. So it's just like an algorithmic thing, even if it's not a curated thing. That the games that were the most popular and most already were the games that were being played the most would then get the biggest featuring and continue to garner a lot of those new impressions and new hits, where the ones that weren't getting that much would just never see that much. That would be my fear, and I think almost is a proven situation, unless there's some form of curation that mixes in this hidden gem type of thing, maybe. But again, it depends on your genre, right? Some of these games and genres play much better in the subscription or Spotify type of format than other games would. And that includes playtime. If you have replayability, you're going to crush some, short form games, right?
That's how Kindle Unlimited kind of came to be, of just romance readers are so voracious that it is not cost effective for them to buy a book every time they finish one. So having a system like that ended up being a win-win for everybody, but not across all genres.
Indie Bro subscription service? Yeah, maybe Missy. We'll look into it. It seems like a pipe dream at this point, but maybe 10 years down the line when we're all wearing gold-plated diapers, as Christopher Walken said in that one SNL sketch. It'll be awesome.
Sounds uncomfortable and like it would chafe a lot. Just saying.
Terrible. Really.
Yeah.
Terrible. Bad. Just opulent for no reason.
Well, is there any final thoughts that we didn't get to in your notes, or anything else you wanted to mention before we ended?
Just to wrap. Yeah, just to wrap. Know that these that we're not in the early days, so the money isn't like fire hosing out, but it still exists, and there's still good offers to get. Offers that can sustain your company for years to come are out there.
So it's not like a mixer of poaching people from Twitch situation anymore.
No. It's much and you have a lot of competing entities now, so that can be leveraged, right? Because there's a lot of players now that want to compete and make their own name in the Xbox game or in the subscription service, trying to get the same sort of recognition that Xbox has with their service. And so that competition benefits developers as well, if you think about it, because they're going to be trying to get this and that makes their platform special, and your game could be part of that sort of what makes their platform special. We talked about some of that. Sorry, I'm just ripping through my notes real quick. So what happens though when the well dries up? as the early days period comes and goes, likely Microsoft will be more discerning and or generally offer less per product as their subscription platform continues to swell with titles. Similarly to how TikTok is currently the easiest mark for getting worthwhile exposure for your game on social media, at some point that will change. And the thought here is not to still be looking for early day deals when it's clearly not there anymore. So instead of it's time to look for new partners and opportunities on the horizon that are looking to build themselves up. That is how that is the cycle that indie developers, that is the, I guess, the wave that indie developers have sort of rode over the last like several decades to survive, is that they know that eventually they're going to have to get off of one wave and start a new wave, because you can think you have a really good relationship with these platform holders, but when the getting's good and everything's fine, it feels that way. But when things change, they don't need you anymore, you'll feel that as well. So you just need to be aware of that. And don't being loyal is great if you can be and you feel strongly about it and you have good relations and stuff. But don't get tricked into it when you might be better served to be able to move on to the next next best option, or the next big thing on the horizon that you are hearing about and knowing, hey, we can get involved in this and benefit from. Because I guarantee you, of all the different subscription services we talked today, there's going to be 5, 10, maybe even way more that we could probably talk about in a couple years from now that are making major impacts that we don't even know about yet.
Yep. So next week we're going to be diving into all things VR, so to speak. Now, this is not something that any one of us is particularly well versed at, so we're going to do some research and look it up. I know we have King Isaac. He does a lot of the VR stuff at the Indie Brothers, so I'll see if we can't get a hold of him, talk to him about some stuff too, get his perspective. And
we really wanted to give VR devs their due, their day in the sun here. We haven't really talked specifically about them. There's a lot of indie VR devs out there looking to make the platform kind of work and stick with it while it becomes viable, a little more ubiquitous, and that may be happening right now. So it's an interesting time to talk about it, and looking forward to that one next week.
All right, any final thoughts before we end it all? Not like
nope
that, but
no, good to go.
All right, well, take care of yourselves, everyone. We'll be back next week with more game industry discussions, and like I said, we'll be talking about VR stuff. Until then, I've been your host, Bumpy McSquigums, joined by a Tiny Disaster and Cupogoodness. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.